Hello and welcome back to vpod.ai. I'm Mike, your host for today.
And I'm Susan, joining you to help unpack what's coming.
And just before we get started, we want to let you know, this podcast is sponsored by Stonefly, your trusted solution provider and advisor in enterprise storage, backup disaster recovery, hyper-converged VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox cluster, AI servers, SA365, a turnkey security appliance, public and private cloud. Check out stonefly.com.
All right.
So let's just jump right in. I want everyone to take a second. Look at the calendar on the wall. It is January 21, 2026.
A date that feels pretty heavy when you say it out loud like that.
It really does. And here's the reality check we need to start with. If you are sitting in your office right now and you're trying to run your team or your company using a playbook from 2021 or 2024, honestly, even from 6 months ago,
you're in trouble.
You need to physically pick that playbook up and throw it in the trash.
That sounds dramatic, but, looking at the research we have today, it's actually the only safe move.
It's not just that the old rules are dusty. It's that they are dangerous. The world has.
Yeah.
It's just fundamentally changed. We aren't dealing with new tech anymore. We're in a completely new operating environment.
We really are. The material we're looking at frames this as the strategic imperatives for 2026. And it all boils down to the convergence of three massive tectonic forces.
Okay.
You got artificial intelligence, which we talk about constantly. Then you have these escalating, highly sophisticated cyber threats. And then, and this is the layer that changes everything, you have intense geopolitical instability.
It's the perfect storm.
It is. And when these three forces collide, the old rules of leadership, they don't just bend, they break.
And the stakes here, we're not talking about missing a quarterly target or having a bad PR week. The experts we're digging into today are framing this as a matter of pure survival.
Exactly. We're going to be pulling apart insights from three really distinct experts: Pinar, Dr. David Bray, and Ken Bant. These aren't just theorists. We're talking about people who operate at the intersection of, national security technology and human psychology.
And the consensus across all three of them?
The consensus is that incremental change is dead. That whole tweak and adjust thing is over. You have to fundamentally rethink how you operate.
So let's get into that first layer, the new battlefield. We're starting with insights from Pinar, the CEO of C5 Capital. Now, usually when we talk about investors, it's all about P&L sheets and exit strategies. But Pinar seems to be playing a different game entirely.
He absolutely is. Pinar operates at a very specific intersection: space, energy, and cybersecurity. And his core argument is, well, it's fascinating and a little bit terrifying.
Okay.
He says that in 2026, technology investments can no longer be viewed as just IT decisions.
Meaning you don't just buy software because it makes the email run a little faster.
Exactly. It's not about efficiency anymore. He argues that every single piece of tech you buy, every cloud contract, every server, is now a national security bet.
That is a massive pivot. I think most leaders view their tech stack as a utility. It's like plumbing. You just want it to work. You're saying Pinar sees it as a military alliance.
Precisely. Because your digital strategy is now inseparable from global stability. And to get why, you have to understand this concept he introduces called the gray zone.
I've seen this term floating around. It sounds like something out of a spy movie,
Right.
But let's ground it. What exactly is the gray zone?
So historically, we have this binary view of the world, right? You are either at peace or you are at war.
Right. Peace means trade. War means tanks.
Exactly. The gray zone is the space in between. Pinar argues we're currently in this zone. It's a state of active conflict, but it's all non-kinetic.
So no missiles.
Not yet. But the conflict is very real. The front lines aren't trenches in a field somewhere. The front lines are your cloud infrastructure, your power grids, your data centers, your IP.
So if I'm a CEO or even just a mid-level manager running a server farm, I'm basically commanding a unit on a digital front line.
In a very real way, yes. You are a combatant in an economic and technological war, whether you signed up for it or not.
Wow. That's a heavy burden to put on a business leader. And that leads to the hardest choice Pinar says leaders have to make in 2026. This is the part that I think will make a lot of people uncomfortable. He says you can no longer be neutral.
That's the key takeaway. You have to choose a geopolitical alignment.
See, this goes against everything the business world has preached for, like 30 years. We've been living in the global village, right? Globalization, sell to everyone, buy from everyone.
Supply chains that wrap around the world.
Pinar is saying that whole era is just done.
Effectively, yes. He argues you have to decide, do you want United States government influence in your infrastructure, Or do you want Chinese government influence? Because you can't have both.
But practically, how does that work? Can't I just use some American software and some Chinese hardware? Mix and match for the best price.
Not anymore, not if you want to be secure. Pinar points out that if you have legacy systems intertwined with vendors from an opposing geopolitical bloc, you have a vulnerability that is now a national security risk.
A backdoor in your basement.
A huge one. So it requires a complete realignment of your tech stack.
You have to pick a side and purge the other side from your systems.
You do. And yes, that is incredibly expensive and disruptive.
Massively.
It is. But Pinar's argument is that the cost of not doing it is so much worse. You risk being shut out of markets, or worse, being compromised and losing everything.
Which brings us to the boardroom. For the last decade, cybersecurity was that thing the IT folks in the basement handled,
Oh, absolutely.
The CEO asks, did we patch the servers? The IT director says yes, and everyone moves on to the marketing strategy.
Oh. Is the firewall icon green? Good, let's talk revenue.
Exactly. But Pinar is saying that whole attitude is now obsolete.
It's dangerous. He argues that cybersecurity has to be a top-level strategic boardroom priority with direct oversight. You need cyber expertise sitting at the table, voting on decisions, not just reporting to the table once a quarter.
Why? Just because the threats are bigger?
It's because the nature of the threat has changed. A cyber attack in 2026 doesn't just mean you lose some customer emails. It causes systemic instability. It can take down critical infrastructure.
So if your board doesn't get these gray zone dynamics,
you're flying blind in a war zone.
That's a sobering thought. You're not just running a business, you're defending territory.
Exactly.
Okay, so Pinar sets the stage. He tells us where we are fighting this gray zone. But that brings us to our next expert, Dr. David Bray from the Stimson Center. Because knowing you're in a war is one thing.
Knowing how to lead through it is something else entirely. And Bray uses this incredible metaphor that really captures the pressure. He calls it the blast radius.
I love a good metaphor, but that sounds ominous. Break down the blast radius for us.
Well, usually when we think of a blast radius, we think of a bomb, right? How far the damage spreads. Bray applies this to decision-making. In this hyper-connected gray zone world, a single tech decision, say, which AI algorithm you deploy, has a global blast radius.
Okay, give me a concrete example. How does one tech decision blow up globally?
All right, imagine you deploy an AI tool to optimize your supply chain. Seems like a harmless efficiency move. But that AI makes a call to route around a certain country. That routing inadvertently aligns with a sanction regime, which then triggers a diplomatic incident, which then violates a data protection law in a third country.
One decision, massive global ripple effects.
The blast radius is huge because everything is connected.
So the CEO can't just be a manager focused on efficiency anymore.
No. Bray argues the CEO must now be a diplomat strategist. You have to understand how your decisions ripple out into that geopolitical gray zone. You have to anticipate the blast before you push the button.
And that leads to maybe the most surprising shift Bray talks about. The revolution in the legal department.
This is huge. And if there are any general counsels listening, this might stress you out a little bit.
I mean, usually the general counsel is the Department of No, right? Or at least the Department of let's wait and see.
Exactly. The traditional legal strategy is wait for all the data, minimize risk by having perfect clarity. But Bray points out that in 2026, the best general counsels are openly admitting that decisions must be made with incomplete information.
That must be terrifying for a lawyer. It goes against everything they learn.
It does, but the reality of 2026 is that the speed of threats is so fast that waiting for perfect clarity is now the greater risk. If you wait until you are 100% sure,
the attack has already happened.
Or the market has already moved on, you become a casualty of the gray zone. You have to act decisively despite the uncertainty.
Which brings up my favorite phrase from this whole analysis.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an insult, really. Problem admirers.
Oh, it's a stinging phrase, isn't it?
Stop being a problem admirer. What does he mean by that?
Bray warns against the tendency. The tendency leaders have to get stuck just analyzing the complexity. They look at the gray zone, the blast radius, the legal risks, and they just freeze. They sit around the conference table and just admire how big the problem is.
Analysis paralysis. You feel like you're working because you're talking, but nothing is actually happening.
Right. Bray says you must shift to a bias for action. You have to iterate rapidly, make the call, see what happens, learn from it, and adjust. Stop admiring the problem and start solving it, even if it's imperfect at first.
So we have Pinar scaring us with the geopolitical reality, the where, and Bray telling us we have to make high-stakes decisions without all the facts, the how. My heart rate is up just thinking about this.
It's intense, but that's why the third expert is so key. We have to talk about the people actually doing the work.
Right. This is Ken Bant, and he kind of brings us back down to earth, to the human engine of it all.
Which is crucial, because you can have the best strategy in the world, you can be a diplomat strategist, but if your people are burnt out or not aligned, it's all for nothing.
And he talks about this idea of a fluid mission. Now, I was taught your mission statement is carved in stone, it's on the plaque in the lobby, it never changes.
And that's the old playbook again. Banta argues that organizational purpose can't be static. The external environment, that gray zone, it shifts way too fast. Leaders need the self-awareness to say, the world changed, so our mission has to change.
That takes a lot of guts to stand up and say, hey, everyone, what we were doing yesterday is no longer the right thing to do today.
It requires immense composure. You're not abandoning your values, but you are adapting your purpose. If you stick to a mission that no longer fits the reality of 2026, you become obsolete.
So how do you know when to change? How do you know if your mission is broken? Banta gives some really specific tactical advice here that I loved. He calls it the listening tour.
This is something any leader can start doing tomorrow. He suggests a very specific format, the 45-minute listening session.
Walk us through that. Is this just a casual coffee chat?
No, it's structured. The leader sits down with employees, and this is key, not just direct reports. You have to go past the VPs. You talk to people on the front line, and you ask one specific question.
What's the question?
You look them in the eye and ask, what is your biggest problem?
That's it.
That's it. And then, and this is the hardest part for most leaders, you just shut up. You listen.
I can just imagine the silence in that room at first.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But Banta says this provides horizontal awareness. It reveals the ground level rot, the broken tools, the systemic issues that the C-suite simply cannot see from up there.
It cuts through the middle management filter.
Exactly. By the time a problem reaches the CEO, it's been sanitized and put in a nice PowerPoint. This raw feedback lets you diagnose the real health of the organization.
And Banta wraps this up with an animal analogy that I think is just brilliant. The eagle and the seagull.
I love this one too. It visualizes the balance so perfectly.
So we all want to be the eagle, right? That's the majestic CEO pose.
We do. The eagle is the strategist. You're at 60,000 feet. You see the big picture, the geopolitics, the whole blast radius. You're spotting the storms on the horizon.
But Banta says if you only stay at 60,000 feet, you fail.
Correct. You also have to be a seagull.
Now, usually being called a seagull is not a compliment.
True. But in this context, it's about agility. A seagull can fly high, but it can also dive down instantly, right to the surface, to grab a fish. Banta says leaders need that ability to dive from strategy straight into execution to fix a specific problem.
Wait, isn't that micromanagement? We're always told, don't micromanage.
There's a subtle but really important nuance here. Micromanagement is hovering. The seagull dive is about fluidity. It's the ability to intervene on a critical issue, help fix it, and then, this is crucial soar, back up to the eagle view.
So it's not about staying in the weeds.
It's about not being afraid of them. It's connecting the strategy to the reality of execution.
Okay, so let's pull all this together. We have these three very different perspectives. Pinar, Bray, and Banta. How do they connect?
Think of it as a hierarchy of survival. Pinar sets the stage. The literal battlefield we're on, the geopolitical tech war. You have to acknowledge that first.
Right. Step 1. Admit where you are. Stop pretending it's 2019.
Step 2 is Bray. He defines the mindset you need to survive on that battlefield. You have to accept you don't have all the information. You have to be a diplomat. You have to act.
And step 3.
Step 3 is Banta. He provides the method. How do you execute that mindset? Through adaptive leadership, by listening to find the truth, and by being fluid enough to be both the eagle and the seagull.
It's a complete ecosystem of leadership. And the urgency here is, you can feel it. It's palpable.
It is. 2026 is the year of decision. This isn't something you can put on the roadmap for next year. Organizations that wait for clarity, they will be relevant by year end.
Because the dust doesn't settle
Yep,
anymore.
the storm is the new normal.
That is terrifying and motivating at the same time. The safety net is just gone.
It should feel that way. And here is a thought I want to leave everyone with. If you are sitting there today, leading with a strategy from 5 years ago, if you are still treating cyber as an IP ticket, if you're waiting for legal to give you a 100% guarantee, you might think you're being prudent.
But you're not.
In reality, you might already be a casualty of this gray zone war. You just don't know it yet.
Wow. That's the wake-up call right there.
Mm.
You might be dead in the water and not even realize the ship is sunk.
Safety is not in standing still. Safety is in speed and adaptability.
Incredible insights. This really changes how I look at the year ahead.
It's a fascinating time to be leading, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Now, before we go, speaking of security and resilience in this gray zone, we need to talk about an incredible offer from our sponsor that fits perfectly with this.
What have they got for us?
We're talking about the Stonefly 100 TB immutable and air-gapped SSO NAS.
Okay, that is some serious hardware. And based on what we just discussed about the gray zone, immutable air-gapped storage is exactly what you need.
It is. If you are worried about data integrity, this is a solution. And the price point is just incredible. We're talking $8,995.
For 100 terabytes, wow. That's a game changer for securing your critical data.
It really is. Check them out at stonefly.com. Thank you for joining me on this discussion.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you, our listener, for joining us on vpod.ai. Good luck out there in the gray zone. We'll see you next time.